Get out of here! The slap echoed through marble and chandeliers. Gasps rippled across the gala like glass cracking under pressure. A woman in a black evening gown, tall, poised, unshaken, stood still as the sting faded from her cheek. Across from her, an older matriarch in pearls hissed, "Get out of here! You don't belong in this circle." Phones were already raised. Whispers turned into murmurs. But Naomi Carter didn't flinch. The Horizon Art Museum glimmered under gold light. Crystal glasses trembled on trays. The string quartet faltered mid-note. Everyone saw it. The billionaire family that hosted tonight's $1B merger gala had just struck a guest they thought was an imposter. No one moved to stop them. Because power, here, looked like white hair and old money. Naomi's dark eyes stayed steady. She didn't raise her voice. She adjusted her earrings slow, deliberate, and said nothing. That silence was louder than any scream. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to Naomi. The woman who slapped her, Eleanor Wexler, head of the Wexler family dynasty, stood trembling with fury. Around her, her husband and 2 adult children watched, half in shock, half in pride. "You think you can walk into our gala dressed like that, pretending to be part of this merger?" she barked, voice slicing through the hall. Naomi's jaw tightened, but her tone remained calm. "Pretending? You heard me," Eleanor snapped. "Security!" From the crowd, a younger woman, Layla, one of the catering staff, froze, tray shaking in her hands. She had seen the look in Naomi's eyes before, the look of someone who's seen this scene play out 1,000 times in different rooms, with different faces, and always the same outcome. "Not tonight," Eleanor raised her chin. "We don't tolerate frauds in this family. My husband has built this empire for 40 years, and you think you can just walk in?" Naomi interrupted softly. "Your empire?" Her voice measured, each syllable placed like a blade. Interesting word choice. The audience held their breath. No one dared speak. Even the violinists had gone silent. A man in a navy tuxedo, Richard Wexler, Eleanor's son, stepped forward, trying to escort Naomi away. "Ma'am, please, let's not make this a scene." Naomi's gaze didn't waver. "You already did." A faint click, someone started recording. Another joined in. Within seconds, half the room had their cameras up, capturing the contrast. One woman humiliated, another dripping with entitlement. Eleanor's voice broke through again, shrill, commanding. "Do you have any idea who I am?" Naomi tilted her head. "Do you?" The question landed heavy. Somewhere near the stage, a journalist whispered, "Who is she?" No one knew yet. Naomi took a single step closer, closing the distance between humiliation and reckoning. Her calmness wasn't weakness. It was the sound of control being rebuilt from ashes. She reached for a napkin, dabbed the corner of her mouth where Eleanor's hand had struck, then placed it neatly on a passing tray. "Thank you," she said to the stunned waiter. Her tone, still soft, still regal, cut through the silence sharper than any scream. Across the room, phones kept filming. History had just started recording, too. For a full 10 seconds, no one moved. The air inside the Horizon Art Museum turned heavy, almost sacred, like the world was deciding whose side it was on. Cameras hovered mid-air. Champagne bubbles rose and died in silence. Naomi Carter still hadn't said another word. Eleanor Wexler's voice finally cracked through the stillness. "Security! Remove her immediately!" Her son, Richard, lifted a hand toward a guard in a black suit. "Let's make this simple, ma'am." But nothing about this was simple anymore. Layla, the young caterer who had seen the slap up close, whispered to a coworker, "That woman didn't even blink." The coworker shook his head. "Man, she's either fearless or about to be famous." Phones kept flashing. Someone's live stream counter ticked upward hundreds, then thousands of viewers. The caption read, "Rich family assaults guest at $1B gala." Naomi's voice finally broke the silence. Calm, precise. "Touch me," she said, "and you'll regret it." It wasn't loud, but it carried. Like thunder in slow motion. Eleanor scoffed, trying to reclaim her power. "You think we're afraid of you? This is our event." Naomi's gaze drifted across the guests, politicians, investors, media sponsors, people whose smiles now trembled. "No," she said softly. "It's everyone's event. You just forgot." The security guard hesitated. He'd seen arrogance before, but this was composure. Behind him, a reporter from the Financial Post raised her phone higher. "Ma'am," she asked cautiously, "What's your name?" Naomi didn't answer. Not yet. She turned slightly, eyes catching a marble statue beside her, Lady Justice, blindfolded, scales tilted, her lips curved almost imperceptibly. "Fitting," she murmured. Layla took a step forward, voice trembling but clear. "She's not lying. She was on the guest list. I saw it, Carter. Naomi." Eleanor's head snapped around. "You'll lose your job for that, girl." Layla swallowed, but stood her ground. "Then I'll lose it telling the truth." The crowd shifted. For the first time, the energy turned tiny, but undeniable. A man in a blue tux whispered, "She really said Carter?" Another guest gasped, "Wait, Carter like Horizon Investments?" The murmurs grew legs, circling the room faster than security could respond. Eleanor tried again, voice shaking with rage. "Enough! I won't have some random woman hijack my night." Naomi's reply was almost a whisper. "It stopped being your night the moment you laid hands on me." The guard froze mid-step. The audience had their verdict before the authorities ever arrived. Somewhere, a phone chimed a notification from Breaking News Live. Viral clip. Black woman slapped at Billionaire Gala, identity unknown. Naomi exhaled slowly, the faintest hint of a smile touching her lips. She wasn't rushing. She didn't need to. Power was already shifting, inch by inch, from the marble floor upward. Across the hall, Eleanor's husband leaned in, whispering harshly, "You've made a spectacle." She hissed back. "She made me do it." But everyone watching knew that wasn't true. Naomi turned, scanning the crowd as if memorizing faces not with anger, but with certainty. Then, softly, "Tonight isn't about embarrassment, it's about exposure." Her tone landed somewhere between prophecy and warning. Layla's phone buzzed. The live stream she'd shared was already trending. Eleanor looked around, realizing for the first time that her empire wasn't built on gold, it was built on witnesses. The violinist in the corner picked up his bow again, playing a single hesitant note that never quite formed a melody. Naomi adjusted her posture, her silhouette framed by the glow of chandeliers. She looked untouchable now, almost royal. And for the first time, the Billionaire family felt small. The security guard never touched her. He couldn't. Something in Naomi's eyes, steady, dark, commanding, made every muscle in his arm hesitate mid-air. He stepped back, almost ashamed. The crowd noticed. Power had shifted, and no one could explain why. Naomi exhaled slowly, lifted her clutch, and pressed her thumb against the corner, an old habit, invisible to most. A faint blue light blinked once. Layla caught it from across the room but said nothing. That single motion was the signal. In a quiet office, 40 floors above the city, Rachel Monroe, Naomi's executive assistant, glanced at her tablet. The Horizon internal network pinged alive, authorization protocol code black. She straightened, heart racing. "It's happening," she whispered, tapping a sequence of commands that would freeze all Horizon-related transactions connected to the Wexler account. Down in the Gala, the room buzzed with whispers. Eleanor Wexler, still trying to regain her footing, turned toward her family. "Call Harold. Get PR on the line. I want that footage deleted now." Her husband fumbled with his phone, but it wouldn't unlock. The network dropped. One by one, their devices went dead. Naomi's gaze followed them calmly. "Is there a problem?" Her voice was silk over steel. Eleanor glared. "What did you do?" Naomi smiled faintly. "Nothing, you didn't authorize yourself." Richard Wexler tried to laugh it off, but it came out strained. "This is absurd. You're bluffing." Naomi tilted her head. "Then check your account." The eldest daughter, Isabel, did. Her face went pale. "Mom, the Horizon Partnership portal just locked us out." A tremor of panic rippled through the family circle. Around them, guests exchanged looks half confused, half thrilled. This was no longer a scandal. It was a spectacle. From the back of the room, the journalist from the Financial Post whispered into her phone, "She just shut down their network live. We're witnessing the end of the Wexler deal." The live stream count hit 50,000 viewers. The comment feed exploded. "Who is she? She's too calm. This is the woman they tried to humiliate?" Eleanor's voice cracked again. "Do you realize what you've done? You've cost us billions." Naomi took a slow step forward, her heels echoing against marble. "Correction. You did that the moment you decided to put your hand on me." She stopped inches away, her reflection glimmering in Eleanor's pearl necklace. "I built Horizon to clean up power, to remind people it doesn't always look the way you expect." The crowd hung on every syllable. Layla, tears glassing her eyes, whispered, "She's incredible." Then the notification tone hit again, this time from someone in the audience. A breaking headline filled the massive LED wall at the back of the stage. Anonymous source confirms, woman assaulted at Gala is Horizon Equity founder Naomi Carter. The room erupted. Gasps, murmurs, disbelief. Every phone turned toward Naomi now, not as a stranger, but as the story. Eleanor's knees buckled slightly. You're her? Naomi's voice stayed calm. I was. Until tonight. She turned to face the cameras. Now, I'm the reminder. The guard, who'd hesitated earlier, whispered under his breath, Damn, she's the CEO. Across the hall, the violinist set his bow down completely. The music was over. Naomi looked around one last time, the chandeliers reflecting like shattered crowns above the guilty. Then, softly but clearly, this is what happens when arrogance forgets who signs the checks. The silence that followed wasn't fear, it was revelation. No spotlight shifted, yet somehow every eye in the Horizon Museum was fixed on Naomi. The chandeliers seemed to dim just enough for her presence to fill the room like gravity. The Wexlers, once the picture of untouchable wealth, now looked like a family on trial. Eleanor Wexler tried to compose herself. She smoothed her pearls, straightened her shoulders, and forced a brittle laugh. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, this woman has clearly misunderstood. Stop. Naomi's voice was calm but absolute. It sliced through Eleanor's sentence like a blade through silk. The crowd went still again. Naomi stepped forward, heels quiet on the marble. You assaulted a guest in front of witnesses. You called security on someone whose name was printed on every contract you begged to sign. There's no misunderstanding here, only exposure. Eleanor's husband stepped in, sweat gathering at his collar. We can handle this privately. Naomi didn't blink. You handled it publicly. We'll finish it the same way. Layla, still near the catering line, whispered to a guest, She's turning it into court. The guest replied, awed. And she's winning. Richard Wexler tried to interrupt. You don't understand business. You can't just... Naomi turned to him. You think this is about business? Her tone deepened, resonant. You built your empire on borrowed respect and inherited arrogance. I built mine on rejection. Gasps fluttered like the rustle of silk gown. Naomi took a slow breath. When I was 23, I was refused entry to a charity dinner I funded because they thought I was catering staff. That night, I learned something important. She paused. They can't see your value until they can't buy it. The line landed like thunder. Phones recorded. Guests nodded, some uncomfortably, others in quiet awe. Eleanor grasped for her wine glass, her voice trembling. You can't humiliate us in our own event. Naomi's answer was gentle, devastating. You did that yourself. I'm just providing the lighting. Laughter, small, sharp, uncontrollable, broke from the edges of the crowd. Even the musicians exchanged stunned looks. The live stream chat exploded. She's teaching a masterclass in composure. Power looks like this. This is history. Naomi didn't smile. She simply turned to the nearest table, where the event's charity documents lay neatly stacked. She picked one up, glanced at the Wexler name across the top, and folded it once. Contract voided, she said softly. Effective immediately. A murmur rippled through the hall. One of the guests, a senator's wife, leaned toward her companion. Can she actually do that? She just did, he whispered. Eleanor lunged forward. You think you can destroy us? Naomi's eyes met hers, steady, merciless, human. No, you already did. I'm simply the moment you realize it. Layla's phone buzzed again. The clip of Naomi's calm dismantling had hit 200,000 views in under 10 minutes. Every second was another nail in the coffin of the Wexler reputation. Naomi turned toward the watching crowd. What happens tonight isn't just a scandal, it's a correction. Her voice filled the marble room with the kind of silence people remember years later. Behind her, the giant painting of Lady Justice loomed, blindfolded and timeless. Eleanor opened her mouth again, but the words failed her. Naomi looked down at the shattered reflection of crystal on the floor and whispered, just loud enough to be heard, The tables have turned, and this one's mine. The marble hall buzzed with tension so thick it hummed. Naomi stood still amid the chaos, unmoved, untouched, unhurried. Behind her, Eleanor's family whispered frantically into dead phones, their screens frozen, networks down. The empire they once flaunted had gone silent. Naomi slipped her hand into her clutch again, tapped a discreet earpiece, and spoke softly. Rachel, initiate phase 2. Her voice barely rose above the room's murmur, but the air changed when she said it. Miles away in a mirrored high-rise, Rachel Monroe, her assistant, leaned over the control panel. Confirming Horizon Audit Protocol active. All Wexler-linked holdings are freezing now. Naomi's eyes tracked the chandeliers above, their crystal lights scattering like shattered promises. Good, she said. Make sure their donations pipeline is paused too. No money laundering under philanthropy. Understood, Rachel replied. The moment she ended the call, one of the investors' phones buzzed, then displayed a message across the screen. Account access revoked by Horizon System. He gasped. It's real, she's actually doing it. The guests began whispering louder now. Not just curiosity, admiration, even reverence. Naomi's silence was louder than any speech. Eleanor's son Richard turned pale. You can't just cut us off. Those funds were part of… Naomi cut in, her words deliberate. The deal you thought you owned. The same one built on disrespect. Eleanor tried to stand tall again, voice trembling. You'll regret this, Miss Carter. We'll sue you for defamation, for breach. Naomi tilted her head. You'll need active accounts to fund that. Laughter burst from somewhere in the crowd. It wasn't cruel, it was cathartic. The kind that erupts when power flips and justice breathes. Layla, now standing among a small circle of guests, whispered, She's not even angry. The older man beside her nodded. That's how you know she's in charge. Naomi turned toward the crowd for the first time. For those wondering, yes, the Horizon Wexler partnership has officially been terminated. Effective immediately. Phones shot up, flashing. 100 witnesses, 1,000 lenses, 1,000,000 eyes waiting online. She stepped closer to the microphone stand meant for Eleanor's speech. Without looking at her, Naomi adjusted it to her height. This isn't about revenge, she said, her tone measured, grounded. It's about recalibration. When people in power confuse their privilege for permission, the system resets. The statement was clean, corporate, and devastating. Every word carried both precision and fire. Behind her, a projection screen blinked alive with live headlines. Horizon Equity withdraws $1B deal mid-gala. Billionaire family under audit after public assault. The Wexlers watched, horror struck, as their names flickered across the room like a digital confession. Naomi turned back toward them. You asked earlier if I knew who you were, she said softly. Now the world does too. Eleanor's pearl necklace snapped as she clutched it too tightly. The sound echoed like punctuation. Naomi didn't move. Her eyes softened, not with mercy, but with closure. Power, she said, was never the problem. The problem was who believed they owned it. The words hung in the air like scripture. Layla raised her phone, her voice trembling with awe. Ma'am, they're saying online this is the most watched live stream in the country right now. Naomi nodded slightly. Good. Then let it mean something. She looked at the crowd, investors, staff, witnesses, and strangers, and delivered one last line before stepping down from the mic. Justice doesn't need to shout, it just needs a signal. And with that, she walked off the stage, her heels clicking like a verdict being sealed. Naomi didn't rush. She never did. Her footsteps across the marble were steady, echoing like a metronome for the chaos left behind. The moment she stepped off the stage, the gala lost its script. People who once fawned over the Wexlers now turned their backs, whispering into phones, recording every glance of the fallen dynasty. A reporter from the Financial Post, trembling with adrenaline, chased after Naomi. Miss Carter, Naomi, just one question, please. Did you plan this? Naomi stopped but didn't turn around. No, she said calmly. I planned to sign a contract. They planned a scene. The reporter froze. Naomi continued walking. Outside, flashes exploded. Paparazzi had already gathered, summoned by the viral feed spreading like wildfire. Headlines were updating by the minute. Black CEO strikes back after Gala assault. Power reversed. The moment that ended a billion-dollar empire. Inside the museum, Eleanor sat slumped in her chair, surrounded by the wreckage of champagne glasses and pride. Richard paced, phone glued to his ear, muttering, PR's not answering. Everyone's dropping us. They can't just abandon us, Eleanor whispered. But they could, and they already had. Layla stood by the catering table, still gripping her phone. The live stream now passed 500,000 viewers. Comments flew by faster than she could read. She didn't scream once. This is how justice looks in real time. Protect Naomi Carter at all costs. Meanwhile, Rachel Monroe watched from Horizon headquarters. The data feed pulsed Wexler Holdings freezing, legal notices dispatching automatically. Her voice trembled as she updated Naomi through the earpiece. All accounts locked. The board just approved full audit authorization. It's over. Naomi smiled faintly. Not over, she murmured. Just balanced. A black SUV waited at the museum steps. The driver held the door open, but Naomi paused, turning back to glance at the glowing windows above the gala that had just eaten itself alive. Through the glass, she saw Eleanor rise unsteadily and grab a microphone, desperate for control. "This isn't over," the matriarch shouted, her voice breaking. "She'll regret this. We'll rebuild." But the audience had already thinned out. Half were outside, half live posting the meltdown. Every camera now pointed not at her, but at Naomi walking down the stairs into the night. The city lights met her like applause. Flashes lit her silhouette, elegant and still. Someone shouted, "Naomi, how do you feel right now?" She stopped at the car door, turned her head slightly, and said, "Free." Then she stepped inside. The SUV door closed with a quiet finality. Inside, Naomi removed the earpiece and leaned back, watching the chaos fade behind tinted glass. On her phone, a message from Rachel appeared. Trending Hasson, number Naomi Carter, number Justice at the Gala. She typed back, "Let the story breathe. Don't defend it. Truth doesn't need PR." Rachel replied with a single word, "Understood." As the car moved through downtown lights, Naomi looked out the window, her reflection framed against billboards already flashing her face beside headlines. She whispered to herself, "It's strange. They only see you when they've already lost you." Back at the museum, Eleanor's voice cracked through a half-empty room. "Turn the cameras off! Stop recording!" But it was too late. The world had seen everything and believed what it saw. Naomi's car disappeared into the night, but her silence lingered, heavy and undefeated. It wasn't revenge. It was correction. And in every boardroom from New York to London, the name Naomi Carter had just become the definition of consequence. Sunlight crawled across the penthouse windows like it had something to confess. Naomi Carter stood barefoot by the glass, coffee in hand, watching Manhattan stir beneath her. The city didn't know peace, it only knew momentum. But today, for once, the world had stopped to say her name. Her phone buzzed non-stop on the marble counter. Headlines scrolled in silence across the screen. Number Naomi Carter rewrites the rules of power. From humiliation to history, the gala that changed everything. Oh, corporate reckoning goes viral. The news anchor's voice echoed softly from the wall-mounted TV. In less than 12 hours, Naomi Carter, founder and CEO of Horizon Equity, terminated a billion-dollar partnership after being physically assaulted by members of the Wexler dynasty. Legal analysts call it the most decisive corporate takedown in recent history. Naomi sipped her coffee slowly, eyes calm. The words didn't inflate her, they grounded her. She'd been invisible too long to mistake attention for validation. Across the room, her assistant Rachel entered, tablet in hand, voice half shocked, half proud. "We're getting calls from everywhere. Bloomberg, Forbes, even the UN Women's Initiative wants an interview. CNN just called it the Carter Clause." Naomi raised an eyebrow. "The what?" Rachel smiled nervously. "The new term they're using when a deal includes ethical exit rights for discrimination." Naomi gave a soft laugh. "They made a clause before they made an apology." Rachel hesitated. "Do you want me to issue a statement?" "No," Naomi said. "Let them talk. Truth grows louder when you don't compete with it." Her phone buzzed again this time, a private message. From Daniel Reyes, CEO of Vanguard Global Holdings. "We saw what happened last night. The world needs leaders who don't flinch. Join us this afternoon. No PR, just principles." Naomi read it twice, then set the phone down. Rachel caught her expression. "You're not surprised?" "No," Naomi replied. "They always come calling after courage goes viral." She walked to her desk, where the folded napkin from last night rested, still faintly stained from the slap. She hadn't thrown it away. She didn't keep it for pain, but for proof. Her reflection stared back from the glass tabletop, composed, deliberate, and utterly awake. "Funny," she murmured. "They thought they were ending my night. Turns out they were starting my movement." Rachel stepped closer, hesitant. "The Wexlers are holding a press conference at noon. They'll try to spin it." Naomi smiled faintly. "Let them. Every lie they tell will land on a truth I already showed." She turned off the TV, letting silence fill the space again. From the window, she could see her company's headquarters in the distance, the Horizon logo gleaming under the morning sunday. For the first time in months, she didn't feel the weight of leadership pressing down. She felt its freedom. Her phone vibrated once more, another headline alert. "Millions tune in as Naomi Carter's silence becomes the loudest message in America." Naomi whispered to herself, "Good, they're finally listening to quiet." Rachel looked at her curiously. What now? Naomi took one last sip of coffee, eyes still on the skyline. Now, she said, we build something untouchable. Outside, traffic honked, cameras clicked, and skyscrapers glimmered. But inside the penthouse, the mood was still calm, deliberate, powerful. The storm had passed. What remained was foundation. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, revealing the top floor of Vanguard Global's headquarters. The walls were glass, the furniture minimal, yet the air carried the kind of gravity that only money and legacy could build. Except this morning, legacy was on trial. Naomi stepped out in a tailored charcoal suit, every movement quiet but assured. Cameras weren't allowed inside this meeting, but somehow everyone already knew she'd arrived. Executives whispered her name like a symbol. Rachel followed behind, tablet in hand, her eyes scanning the faces waiting around the obsidian conference table. Daniel Reyes rose from his chair as Naomi entered. He was in his 50s, calm, commanding, the kind of man who'd spent his life in rooms that decided economies. Yet even he looked slightly nervous as he extended his hand. Miss Carter, he said, thank you for coming. You've changed more than last night's headlines. Naomi shook his hand firmly. I didn't plan to. I just refused to shrink. He smiled, motioning her toward a seat at the center of the table. Then let's talk about what comes next. Around them sat 12 of the most influential corporate leaders in the Western Hemisphere: tech, finance, media, energy. For the first time in memory, they weren't meeting to discuss profits. They were meeting to discuss ethics. The monitors on the walls displayed the same phrase, the Carter Standard, rebuilding trust in power. Naomi raised an eyebrow. You turned a moment into a movement overnight. Daniel leaned back. The world needed a reminder that silence isn't weakness, that accountability is strength. You delivered that in front of millions. One woman, CEO of a European bank, spoke up. Your clip is being taught in leadership seminars this morning. People are calling it the horizon effect. We wanted to hear directly from you. What happens after justice? Naomi considered that, her gaze sweeping the room. After justice, she said slowly, comes responsibility. Power without reflection always repeats the same harm. I didn't fire back to humiliate them. I did it to remind us all respect isn't optional currency. Her words hung in the air like a calm verdict. Across the table, a man in a navy suit nodded. You understand what you did last night, don't you? You changed the narrative of who gets to be the authority in the room. Naomi smiled faintly. Authority was never about volume. It's about vision. Daniel Reyes clasped his hands. Vanguard wants to partner with Horizon on a new global initiative, an ethics fund. It'll invest only in companies that meet the Carter Standard. Rachel's eyes widened. You mean a system that measures not just profit but principle? Exactly, Daniel said. We're calling it the Equal Table Project, and we want you to chair it. The room went quiet, expectant. Naomi looked out at the skyline beyond the glass walls, the same skyline where, just 12 hours ago, people doubted her right to stand beside them. I'll accept, she said finally, but on one condition. Daniel leaned forward. Anything. Naomi's tone sharpened, but her voice stayed low. No photo ops, no campaigns, just change. A murmur of agreement rippled through the table. Someone whispered, she means it. Naomi continued, if the world's watching, we might as well give them something worth seeing. Daniel extended his hand again. Then we're agreed. Naomi shook it, sealing not just a deal but a shift in how power would be defined from that day forward. As she rose to leave, Daniel said quietly, you know, Miss Carter, you didn't just end an empire last night. You set a new one in motion. Naomi smiled, eyes steady. Good. Let's build one that deserves to last. Outside the conference room, sunlight spilled across the glass corridor, catching Naomi's reflection strong, centered, and unafraid. For the first time in history, the boardroom didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like balance. The Horizon Tower shimmered like a blade of glass cutting into the New York skyline. Inside, the elevator doors opened to the 58th floor, Naomi's floor, but this morning, it didn't feel like ownership. It felt like arrival. Employees lined the hallway, pretending to work but clearly waiting. Screens across the open office streamed news segments replaying the gala, the slap, the silence, the moment the world flipped. Naomi walked through the middle, her presence steady, unbothered by the flash of phones. Rachel walked beside her, whispering updates. We've gained 40,000 new investors overnight. The board's requesting an emergency session, and we just passed Apple in global searches. Naomi smiled faintly. Let them search. Truth makes the best marketing. When she entered the main conference room, the entire leadership team rose to their feet. Some clapped, others just stared, awed, guilty, uncertain. Marcus, the CFO, spoke first. Miss Carter, we wanted to say, we stand behind everything you did. The courage, the restraint it was. Naomi raised a hand. Don't make me the story, make the standard. The room fell quiet. She set her tablet on the glass table, displaying a single slide. Horizon 2, the equal table policy. Effective immediately, Naomi began, Horizon will restructure leadership to reflect the people we claim to serve. Half of all executive seats will go to underrepresented talent from within the company. No optics, no tokenism, merit and respect, side by side. Murmurs filled the room. A few looked surprised, others inspired. A senior partner, Richard Kim, frowned slightly. That's a radical move, Naomi. Investors may see it as instability. Naomi's gaze met his, calm and unwavering. Instability is pretending diversity exists when it doesn't. Rachel nodded quietly. We'll lead by correction, not convention. Naomi continued, pacing slowly. We've all seen what unchecked privilege does. It confuses volume for value. The Wexler deal ended because arrogance thought it owned civility. That ends here. Starting today, Horizon becomes the mirror we wanted them to face. Marcus leaned forward. So this is permanent? Naomi looked around the table. So is dignity. Silence, then a slow ripple of applause. It wasn't loud, it was honest. Across the glass wall, the skyline stretched endlessly. Naomi turned toward it, her reflection merging with the city. They thought power was about controlling the table, she said softly. They were wrong. It's about expanding it. Rachel smiled. I've already got emails from young analysts, people saying they applied because of you. Naomi nodded. Then we start by listening to them. Just then, the conference doors opened. Layla, the young caterer from the Gala, stood there, uncertain but determined. Rachel blinked. Layla, I was told to come. Miss Carter wanted to see me. Oh. Naomi gestured toward an open seat at the table. Yes, you spoke truth when silence was safer. That's leadership. Layla froze. You mean here? Right here, Naomi said gently. Welcome to Horizon. The room fell silent again. But this time it wasn't shock, it was respect. Outside, helicopters circled over the tower, the city still buzzing with her name. But in that room, something quieter was happening, something the cameras couldn't frame. Power was learning how to share its own reflection. Naomi closed her tablet, folded her hands, and said, let's build the next chapter, one that doesn't need defending. The meeting adjourned, not with fanfare, but with purpose. And for the first time, Horizon didn't just look powerful, it looked just... By Thursday morning, Naomi Carter had become an idea more than a person. Billboards in Times Square flashed her face over the words, Power Redefined. Oh, talk shows dissected her calm like it was a strategy. Podcasts called her the Quiet Revolution. Every headline sang the same note. Naomi Carter, the woman who ended an empire. From her office window, she watched the world perform its admiration. Down below, cameras swarmed Horizon's plaza. Reporters waited for another statement, another viral moment, but there wouldn't be one. Not today. Rachel entered, holding a stack of proposals. We've got invitations from Harvard, the World Economic Forum. Even Time magazine wants to name you Person of the Year. Naomi smiled faintly. They don't even know me. Rachel hesitated. They think they do. Naomi turned from the glass. That's the problem. They see the story, not the lesson. She sat at her desk, scrolling through messages, some in gratitude, some in anger, most in awe. One stood out, from a young girl in Atlanta. Miss Carter, I watched what they did to you. My teacher said power means staying loud. You showed me it can mean staying still. Naomi's fingers paused over the keyboard. She didn't reply, she didn't need to. The message had already done its job. Her phone rang again, CNN. She let it go to voicemail, then Forbes, then the mayor's office. Finally, Rachel asked, You're really not going to speak publicly? Naomi shook her head. Let the noise play itself out. Justice isn't a concert, it's calibration. Rachel smiled softly. You always find the poetry in control. Naomi corrected her. It's not control, it's clarity. Outside, the stock ticker on Horizon's building flashed a new symbol, HZN, marking a historic climb. The company's valuation had tripled in 72 hours. Investors called it the Carter effect. Naomi looked at the ticker, unmoved. Funny how silence makes money, she said quietly. Then she turned back to her screen, watching a live interview. Eleanor Wexler, pale, rehearsed, sat beside her attorney. The anchor asked, "Do you regret what happened at the gala?" Eleanor hesitated, her voice brittle. "It was a misunderstanding. Emotions were high. I've reached out to Miss Carter for a conversation." The anchor pressed. "Has she responded?" Eleanor swallowed. "Not yet." Naomi muted the screen. "That's the difference," she murmured. "They call it damage control. I call it consequence." Rachel leaned against the table. "The press keeps calling you the new face of corporate morality." Naomi laughed under her breath. Then morality finally found better lighting. Silence lingered for a beat. Then Rachel asked, "So what do we do now?" Naomi looked out at the city again, endless, restless, alive. "We keep building, but quietly. The world's loud enough." She reached for the folded napkin she kept in her drawer, the same one from the gala. Still faintly creased, still marked by the night, everything changed. She placed it on the desk beside her coffee cup, like a small, private reminder that progress begins with insult but ends with integrity. "People think I won a war," she said softly, "but I just refuse to fight on their terms." Rachel nodded. "That's why they call you unshakable." Naomi looked up, her tone calm, final. "No, just centered." Outside, the noise kept growing: applause, outrage, analysis. Inside, Naomi Carter worked in silence, her empire humming with order. Justice had become infrastructure now, and in a world addicted to noise, quiet had finally become the loudest power of all. The invitation came wrapped in gold foil, embossed with the seal of the United Nations. "Miss Naomi Carter is hereby recognized for outstanding global leadership in equity and ethics." It was the highest honor a business leader could receive. Most people would have framed it. Naomi placed it face down on her desk. Rachel blinked. "You're not going?" Naomi shook her head. "I didn't start this to be celebrated. I started it because I was tired of watching good people be erased quietly." She turned toward the window, watching the gray sweep of clouds drift above Manhattan. "I think it's time I go home for a while." 2 days later, Naomi's car rolled through the narrow streets of South Atlanta, the same neighborhood she'd left 15 years ago with nothing but student loans and conviction. The houses leaned a little, the signs had faded, but the rhythm hadn't changed. Kids played basketball in cracked driveways. Music pulsed from a barbershop with an open door. Life unpolished, unfiltered, was still alive here. As she stepped out, a few people recognized her from the news. "That's her," one woman whispered. "The lady from the gala." Naomi smiled gently, waved, and kept walking toward a small brick building on the corner. Carter Youth Center. She'd funded it years ago, but hadn't visited since the ribbon cutting. The director, Mrs. Holloway, an older woman with silver braids, opened the door wide. "Well, if it isn't the prodigal daughter of Atlanta," she teased. Naomi laughed softly. "You make it sound biblical." "Child, what you did might as well be," Mrs. Holloway said, pulling her into a hug. Inside, the air smelled of paint, paper, and hope. Teenagers filled a computer lab, designing logos for startups they dreamed of launching. One boy looked up, eyes wide. "Wait, you're Naomi Carter?" Naomi nodded. "That's what they tell me," he grinned. "You didn't even raise your voice, and the whole world shut up." Naomi smiled, kneeling beside him. "You don't always need to shout to be heard. Just stand long enough for silence to catch up." Across the room, a mural covered the wall portraits of local heroes. Right in the center was Naomi's face, painted in shades of bronze and gold, eyes calm, mouth slightly curved. Below it read a quote she'd never said out loud. "Respect is not a reaction, it's a decision." She stared at it for a long moment, her throat tight. Mrs. Holloway noticed. "You didn't paint that?" Naomi shook her head. "No, they did." "Then I guess you already got your award," the old woman said softly. Outside, the afternoon turned warm and heavy, the kind of southern heat that made time move slower. Naomi sat on the steps of the center, watching kids run past, laughing. For the first time since the gala, she let herself feel it, not triumph, not vindication, just peace. Her phone buzzed another headline, another offer, another noise. She turned it face down beside her. A girl about 12 walked up shyly. "Miss Carter?" Naomi smiled. "Yes?" The girl bit her lip. "When they told you you didn't belong, how did you know you did?" Naomi looked out over the street, eyes distant but kind. "Because I stopped asking for permission." The girl nodded slowly, as if she'd just heard something sacred. When Naomi finally stood to leave, the sun was setting behind the skyline, painting everything in gold, the same color as that invitation sitting unopened on her desk. She smiled to herself. Recognition fades, she whispered, but reflection stays. The car door closed behind her, and as it pulled away from the curb, the mural on the wall caught the last light of the day, her image, watching over a neighborhood that now believed silence could move mountains. 3 months later, Naomi stepped into a quiet ballroom in Midtown Manhattan, the same kind of room where everything had once unraveled. Tonight, it wasn't a gala, it was a hearing. A charity board reviewing the Wexler Foundation's future. Across the table sat Eleanor Wexler, older, smaller, stripped of her empire but not her pride. When their eyes met, the room held its breath. Eleanor spoke first. "I came to apologize." Naomi nodded once. "I didn't come for that. I came to listen." Eleanor's voice shook. "You destroyed everything we built." Naomi's reply was calm, surgical. "No, Eleanor, you did. I just turned on the lights." The silence after was clean final. Eleanor looked down, tears catching in her throat. "Do you ever regret it?" Naomi stood, gathering her notes. "Regret implies I lost something. I only removed what was never mine to carry." She extended a hand, not in friendship, but in closure. Eleanor hesitated, then shook it, her grip trembling. Naomi turned toward the door. Before leaving, she said quietly, "Justice doesn't humiliate, it educates. Some lessons just cost more than others." Outside, the city hummed its towers, glowing like witnesses. Naomi walked into the night, unguarded, unhurried, her reflection trailing across the glass. For once, the world wasn't watching. It was learning.